welcome Dr. Indranil Basu Ray, who's an eminent cardiologist and author and has done extensive research on stress and yoga and its impact on heart health. Over to you, Dr. Basu Ray.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here. Thanks for inviting me. So today I'm going to talk on something that I hope to get all of you understand, that you have the power of changing yourself. And if that looks like big talk, at the end of today, we'll try to show how that's true. Remember one thing, that I'm a physician scientist. So I'm not a guru. I'm not somebody who speaks on emotion. I speak on scientific basis. And we have enough scientific evidence that the largest killer in the world, 70% of people dying today die because of what we know as non-communicable disease. And out of that 70%, almost twice the number die because of heart disease, stroke, and stuff like that. So the largest killer in the world is heart disease, and the second largest killer is cancer, and twice the number of people die because of heart disease than cancer. Some of the important things that possibly all of you know, and I'm just trying to reiterate that again. Hypertension, as you know, 50% of the population have hypertension in the US, and people from Southeast Asian community is one of those that's especially liable to have hypertension for a bunch of reasons. I'll talk about that. And same with diabetes. There are a few million diabetic supporters, and the sad story is with this hypertension, with the diabetes, they all lead to dangerous consequences. And what are those consequences? Consequences are having multiple heart attacks, having sudden cardiac death, and having other problems which are directly related to the heart. Now, the question is, why does non-communicable disease have become a majority killer, which was not so, say, 200 years back? Because at 200 years back, most people used to die because of infection. So today, a couple of things has happened, which has made us all liable to be dying because of non-communicable diseases like heart attack, cancer, and stuff like that. So one is development of powerful antibiotics, which has killed a lot of infections that we know. Second is change in our living conditions. We are more stressful today. There's more competition, whether in your job, there may be problems in your family. So there are multiple things in our life which causes us to be stressed out, depressed, anxious. And unknown to us, all of these impact our health and cause diseases. So yes, the commonest cause of non-communicable disease is actually lifestyle. You have a lifestyle where you eat at odd times. You have a lifestyle where you don't get time to do exercise. You have a lifestyle where you have a lot of stress for different reasons. I mean, it could be in your job, it could be in your family, and that's part of living. I mean, none of us live in heaven, so part of living. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is these things are taken for granted. Why? Because there's no real reason that to think that you'll leave your job. What about getting another job? That might never happen. So leaving your job, what about leaving your family? That's not going to happen either. So the question is, it's not stopping stress, but making sure that stress, that anxiety does not affect you. Is that possible? Absolutely. And that's based on science. How is it possible? So whenever we get stressed out, when we are anxious, when we are depressed, a bunch of things happens. First of all, our brain circuit changes to make us more depressed, more anxious. Why? Because the body thinks that we are in physical danger, and it must pick up every single signal. So even normal things happening in life will get you stressed out, will get you depressed, will get you anxious, because the entire organism in you thinks you're in danger. That's number one. So it doesn't end there. That's just the beginning. What does that do? That number, as I said, it changes your brain cells so that you're more liable to produce brain cells that keeps you in anxiety, keeps you in stress, because the body thinks you're in danger and it should not miss picking up anything that is dangerous. So you're not living in the jungle. You don't get run over by a T-Rex or a large serpent, but even the smallest thing in life will start getting you into a bunch of reaction, a cascade of reaction that makes you think you're in high danger. And what are these cascade of reactions? A bunch of them happens. Number one, large number of chemicals are released, which makes your heart go fast. And some people die out of it. And that's called sudden cardiac death. You heard the story of Mary Lisa Presley, daughter of Presley, who just died a couple of days back. That's called sudden cardiac death. I mean, she's not the only one. By the time I started talking, maybe a couple of minutes, every minute, 1 or 2 minutes, every American dies out of sudden cardiac death. And the tragedy is they die of sudden cardiac death even before they can call 911 or can be taken to a hospital or leave alone a hospital, even before they can get up on an ambulance. So 70% die before they can even, an ambulance reaches them. So this is sudden cardiac death. Diabetes, hypertension, as you know, massive sufferer, few million deaths, over 7 million deaths. 500,000 people in America die out of diabetes, 500,000 out of hypertension. Southeast Asian community, unfortunately, is the odd people out. Not from the good side, from the bad side. Why? Southeast Asian community suffers from what is known as malignant heart disease. So they get severe heart attack at much younger age. They can get repeated heart attack. And why is that? This is because of inflammation. What is inflammation? So as I said, when you get stressed out due to any reason, and it may be just normal, normal life, normal work can give you stress. But if you do not know how to tackle that stress, what happens is that stress becomes what is known as toxic stress. And the toxic stress causes inflammation in your blood vessels. Inflammation of your blood vessels causes obstruction to the blood vessels in your heart, causing heart disease, to your brain, causing stroke, maybe to your eyes, causing blindness, to your legs. People with diabetes get their legs chopped off because there is gangrene of their legs. So the names are different. You call it stroke, you call it heart disease, but the devil is one. That is inflammation in the arteries. So people with diabetes, as you know, 1 in 4 adults have diabetes in the US, and there's a large, and that's supposed to be like an iceberg. That is, 1 in 10 people don't even know that they have diabetes, and it takes time for them to get diagnosed till they go to a doctor, get their HbA1c. So there's a large people, same with hypertension, huge number, 9 out of 10 people don't even know they have hypertension until they land up to either measuring their own blood pressure or go for a regular checkup. So this is how the mind works. So A, mind causes inflammation. B, mind changes the brain so that you are more liable to get inflammation because you're more liable to be anxious. Why? Because the mind thinks that your body is in danger, so you cannot miss anything. So somebody whispers from next door, you take it as if you're being attacked by a T-Rex. No, I'm not joking. That's the actual truth. That's how your body behaves. You may not behave like that, but that's how your body behaves. So body keeps the entire organism at the height of the cliff, where one wrong step and you just fall. And that does not happen only physically. That also goes to the genetic level. There's a whole bunch of genes, 300 odd genes called CTRA. And these genes get activated, which actually perpetuates all the bad things happening. So what are the bad things happening? As I said, one is abnormal brain circuits develop that keeps you anxious, depressed, stress prone. B, you release a bunch of chemical that can make your heart go fast, that can cause diabetes because it obstructs the work of insulin. So your diabetes worsen, your blood sugar worsen, you get more obstruction, leading to all the bad diseases. And this goes on perpetuating because when you have a genetic change, that has got a lot of ramifications. And worst thing is your immunology also get depressed. Why? Because when your immunology is busy not trying to save you from viruses like, say, COVID, so your chance of getting COVID increases, or your chance of dying from COVID increases. But so there is an immunological problem that's going on because of your brain being stressed. And at the same time, your body develops certain immunological chemicals called interleukins, which actually worsen your heart disease. It worsens your cancers. Though it's not sure, most of scientists don't believe that this stress can actually create cancer, but it's beyond any doubt. Every oncologist on earth believes that if you have stress, if you have anxiety, if you have these things, if you already have cancer, your metastases will increase. But let's not go into controversy. For what we know, every heart disease gets worsened with this. Now, how do you prevent it? Prevention is very, very simple. You don't have to do something miraculous. The fact is that you have to understand these are diseases of lifestyle or because of modern civilization. So drugs help to control them. Drugs do not cure them. There is no cure for, say, coronary artery disease. You can get a stent, you can get a bypass surgery. They are all symptomatic cure. They don't cure your coronary artery disease. You can take a bunch of drugs that will reduce the chance of having another attack, but doesn't make it zero. So to make it zero, how to control your blood sugar? There's a bunch of new drugs. They are extremely efficient. Can they completely control your diabetes? Unfortunately, no. They cannot cure your diabetes. They can control your diabetes only if you make lifestyle changes along with those. Now, what are the lifestyle changes that you need to do? So some of the field that we work in, or our organization, American Academy of Yoga and Meditation, is the role of yoga as a scientific entity. And that's a very important disclaimer that I want to give you. You open up YouTube, you'll find some guru advising you how to keep your colon clean, somebody advising you how to get sleep. So modern science doesn't work like that. And these gurus will say, well, I have 30 years of experience. I've been teaching yoga for 10,000 years. It doesn't matter how many billions of years you've been teaching yoga. What is not scientific is not scientific, because yoga therapy is a clinical science. Just teaching yoga, just if you can like bend your every joint of your body, that doesn't make you a great yoga therapist. It does make you an expert yoga practitioner, but that doesn't make you a yoga therapist. Why? Because not only should you know the correct ways to do yoga, and there are millions of people in this planet who can do that, but what you don't know and what you should know, and where there's a big lacuna, is you got to also know the clinical science, because these yogas have been used in trials to show if they're effective. Logically, you might say, okay, this drug should be effective. That's logically, but logic is not science. To use that drug, for FDA to approve that drug, you need to do clinical trials, and only then FDA will approve it. Otherwise, FDA will not approve it. There are hundreds and thousands of drugs coming out every day. FDA doesn't approve them. There are hundreds of diabetic drugs. They are not approved by FDA. Not only that, FDA has actually come with a diktat now that every manufacturer has to not only show that the drug works with diabetes, but also protects the heart. Why? Because nobody dies out of diabetes. They die out of heart disease. So it's important to understand that this concept has to be very clear to you, that today, if you want to prevent yourself from getting a disease, have a better control of your heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, drugs are just not enough. They are important, but they're not enough. You need to bring in lifestyle changes. And I'll go shortly into what the lifestyle changes are. But the other aspect that is important to understand is, what is yoga? 90% of people in this country believe yoga is just doing some postures or asanas. Unfortunately, that is only 2%, to me, 2 to 5% of yoga. A complete yoga that actually helps to change your lifestyle, bring out radical changes in your lifestyle that will help you control your diabetes, control your hypertension, prevent you from getting heart disease ever in your life, and even get you younger. Yeah, you didn't hear me wrong. I'm not one of those peddlers of nonsense. Being a scientist, I can say there are molecular level fact, though not as a whole human being, there are molecular level evidence that yoga can make you younger. How? For example, in 2010, they did a research at Mass General Hospital, one of the Harvard hospitals, where they showed that if you practice for 5 years meditation, your brain grows. Is that stunning to you? To me, it is. 35% of population in this country, 85 and above, languish in nursing homes. They don't know their name. They don't know their family's name. They don't know who their son is. They don't know where they live. That's called dementia. But if you can make your brain grow, you'll never, ever have dementia. There are certain evidence. There's a hypertension trial done by the lady who got Nobel Prize in 2009, Elizabeth Blackburn, which actually showed that something called telomerase. I'll not go into much of science here, just for because I do not know the background of our listeners. But long story short, it meditation might prevent aging also. So what is this yoga? This yoga is not some sort of a monkey dance where you can bend every part of your body. No, that's not yoga. There are yoga postures. There are good yoga therapists who can teach yoga postures. But other than yoga postures, you have to practice mindfulness and meditation. So there's 8 wings of yoga. You have to practice the 7 wing. The first two wings are more like moral things, yama and yama. And why morality is important? It's not important. You don't have to do morality. But the problem is, if you don't do morality, psychologically you'll be stressed. And if you're psychologically stressed, that itself is a cause for disease. So the yama and yama is because of that moral things that you need to follow. But then comes doing asanas or postures. There are postures that you can do. For example, sun salutation is a set of 12 postures that you can do. And sun salutation can be done or modified in a different way. You can do it faster. And this is what we actually teach. We do workshops on a regular basis where we teach how to control your hypertension, how to control your diabetes, how to prevent heart disease, how to get younger. That's what American Academy of Yoga and Meditation does. So you can do sun salutation in a faster form, which uses more energy and helps to bring down your blood sugar. Then there comes is breathing techniques, pranayama. Certain pranayama techniques like, I don't know how many of you have heard, there's Kapalabhati, there's Brahmari. Brahmari actually increases something called nitric oxide, which prevents blockages in your heart, prevents blockages in your brain. So these are all based on scientific proof. And that's important in the whole concept of yoga therapy. As I said, I'm a guru, and this is all based on my 30 years experience. Those days are gone. Nobody cares what sort of a guru. And that's why there's a lot of misinformation, whether you go to YouTube or social media. And that's where it's important that you have to get to the right things and you have to do the right things. And that right things comes not from Google University, because Google University is open to everybody and anybody can put in anything up there. So you have to, just like you wouldn't go to a guy who has not even gone into medical school to get your heart checked up. There's no reason why you should go to somebody with no understanding of clinical yoga to just ask you to help treat you about yoga therapy for the particular disease. It's as simple logic as that. So going forward, there are breathing techniques which help in different things. As I gave you an example, like Brahmari increases nitric oxide. There are other breathing techniques also. Then there is, you have something called pratihara, which means concentration, where you tend to take your mind off other things. And then you have something called dharana, which to me, I call it as the commonest English word with that would be something like mindfulness. So this sudden explosion of mindfulness that you find in American literature as if it has been discovered for the first time is because these people have no clue what it is. And they don't understand that this is a 10,000-year-old philosophy from Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which I don't know how old it is because we don't have chronological dating at that back, but it is certainly a couple of thousand years back. Some people say 3,000, some people say 5,000. Without going into controversy, it is not something, it's something America might have learned yesterday, but it's not something we learned yesterday. We have that in our philosophy years back. And just because I brought out the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, it's important to understand that a lot of people believe if you do yoga, it changes your religion. It does not, because the Bible of yoga is Patanjali Yoga Sutra. In those 196 aphorisms, there's nowhere does he talk about any god or any god that you have to follow. Because yoga is a manual. What do you mean by that? What I mean by that is today you buy a self-driving car like, say, Tesla or some of the newer ones like Lucid, you got to read the manual. Otherwise, you'd be just driving it like a broken Toyota. So unless you understand the electronics, you are not going to get the Tesla drive you. You'll still be driving the Tesla just like your broken Toyota truck. So similarly, the body is just a device. You are the soul inside the body. You should know how to drive it. If you drive it wrongly, you're going to jump off the cliff. But if you drive it lightly, it's auto driven. Because remember, less than 100 years since we developed our automobile, now we have a self driving car. So imagine the power of nature. It took 4 to 6 million years. Some people say even longer for us to be developed as a human being. So this organization, this organism is a magic. If humans could develop a self-driven car in 100 years, you could imagine how powerful the car that is you are. But you got to read the manual to use it. If you behave in a dumb fashion, not doing what is right, not reading the manual. So Patanjali Yoga Sutra is just a manual. So what Pratyahara does, it concentrates your mind into things that you need to think of. Then you have mindfulness. There are different ways of doing mindfulness, like that'll be a topic for another day. As I said, when we do workshop, we teach all those things, how to do mindfulness for diabetes, for hypertension. So there are different ways. And why is that important? Once you do mindfulness, that's the stepping stone to practicing meditation. And as you do meditation, a couple of things happen. Number one, that's where the magic starts. Number one, you can change your brain. It just takes 4 weeks to change your brain to a stress, anxiety, depression-oriented brain to a brain which is not stress-oriented, which is not anxiety-prone, which is not depressed. And these are not, again, not because of my personal experience. These are all because there's scientific literature. Every year, over 1,000 journal articles comes out on yoga. How do I know? Because we wrote a whole book on yoga. This is the book we have. I don't know if you guys can see. We wrote a whole book on yoga. And over 80 authors from Harvard, Emory, name it, wrote this book. So they're all scientists. They've never been to India. They are not, so they have never done yoga in this life. So how come they wrote this book? They wrote this book because they are scientific researchers and they know what yoga did. They had yoga practitioners teaching people yoga and they showed the benefit. So this is a complete scientific book as to what yoga does in hypertension, in diabetes, in heart failure, and stuff like that. So that's where the science comes. So after pratyahara, as I said, dharana is mindfulness. Then you have meditation. And meditation, as I said, first changes your brain. 4 weeks, I tell my people, 4 weeks of meditation, you can change your brain enough so that you're less likely to get stressed out for unwanted things. I'm not sure if I should use the word politically correct, use the word unwanted, but that's what happens. When you are stress prone, things that should not get you stressed, you get stressed. And that's the problem. Like I have an older father, there's COVID in the community, I am stressed out. That's normal. If I love my father, that's normal. That's not unwanted stress. I have an exam tomorrow, I'm stressed out because of the exam tomorrow. Or tomorrow I have to put a plant in front of my boss, I'm stressed out, that's normal. And that stress is actually good because that stress makes you perform better. But if today my mother dies, which she did, and she died 2 years back, even today, if I'm depressed, that's malignant depression, means that's malignant stress because am I unhappy that my mother died? No, that is normal for every human being. But if I cry every day, that's bad because that shows that that's called pathological depression. So some anxiety, some stress is good, makes you better, makes you perform better. But some, when they are prolonged for a long time, after the incident event, that becomes bad. So these are a couple of things that you have to understand, and yoga takes care of everything of them. So just doing a bunch of asanas every day doesn't change much. Maybe it does have some benefits. It does have benefits. In fact, people have told me, well, I do Zumba because that is better than yoga. That's not correct. If you look at 2020 American Journal of Family Medicine, they compared yoga with Zumba and Pilates, and they found hypertension is better controlled with yoga than these drugs. But what yoga is that? That yoga is not some yoga studio going and teaching you how to bend your knees and bend your neck and bend your legs. No, that's just 2% of yoga. So if you're doing something, you got to do it fully. You have to practice all. And you don't have to practice for ages. Just practice for 4 to 6 weeks. Cancer patient releasing dangerous chemical called interleukin-6 in their body, which damages the heart, damages the brain, damages everything. Just by 4 weeks of yoga, they can stop the level of interleukin-6. And just giving, because I remember interleukin-6, let me give you an example. You guys know millions died due to COVID, right? How many of them do you think was killed by COVID? The answer is not even one. I don't know if you guys heard that. I'm repeating that. Not even a single person till now died because of COVID. Why? Because the virus did not kill anybody. The people who died killed themselves. What do we mean by that? When you have rogue immunology, that means you are producing dangerous chemical to kill the virus. And the virus obviously gets killed, but even you get killed because those viruses, the initial virus attack, we could the interleukin level of interleukin 6 produce damaged lungs in 5 days. People were in ventilators, completely fried up your brain, completely fried up your heart. So it's your release, and that chemical is called interleukin 6. That chemical release can be is there in everything, whether you have a heart attack, whether you have cancer, because that's the brain's mechanism of working, as I told you. And you can reduce that by just doing 4 to 6 weeks of yoga. 4 to 6, 5 days a week, you do yoga, not more than half an hour, 20 to 25 minutes. Practice meditation, practice mindfulness. Remember, stress is a 24/7, 365 event. So when you practice mindfulness and meditation and you change your brain, it works 25/7. You can't be in the gym 24/7, 365 because you have a family, you have a job, you have to earn for your family, you have a profession. But you can still be in the gym without physically being in the gym 24/7, 365 if you can change the brain enough by practicing meditation. Whereas physical exercise in form of doing yoga, like Surya Namaskar, some of the twisting techniques for diabetes, they are known to increase insulin production also. And also, it's a fact, I don't know how many of you know, the problem is most of the diabetes is type 2 diabetes. So the problem is not with how much insulin you have. 90% of you who have diabetes have more insulin than even a normal person. So the problem is not with how much insulin. The problem is that insulin is ineffective for a bunch of reasons. Either the insulin is abnormal or the insulin is absolutely normal, but the way it works, that mechanism is messed up in diabetes. With that, I will stop now. I think I have just come to my time. I'll be open to questions whenever you guys have any. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here again. I'm really thankful to the team. We are part of American Academy of Yoga and Meditation. Feel free to go to our website, and I think we can have links. You can go. And we practice scientific use of yoga. So from today, you have to know yoga is a science, and you got to practice it scientifically based on scientific research and not follow anything that lacks science. And that's the greatness of the whole philosophy. It's a 10,000 years old philosophy. Even Patanjali's book doesn't have a single word which is unscientific. Yeah, there are a lot of things which science cannot explain. That's okay. I mean, even Einstein was wrong, and that gave them 3 Nobel Prize this year. So if Einstein can be wrong, a lot of other people can be wrong. But this is a practice that has been there for 10,000 years. Using functional MRI CT scan, we know it works because, as I said, like these books, there are tons of people who are physicians, scientists, who have shown the world that yoga works. Not because I'm from India and I believe it, or somebody's a big guru for 10,000 years and he believes it. It's because science believes it. With that, I'll stop now. Thank you very much.
I would like to welcome Dr. Sujit Poonam, who is also an eminent cardiologist, specialty in interventional cardiology. Without taking any more time, Dr. Sujit, I would like to invite you to have a session on the treatment for heart attack and bypass surgery.
Heart attack and stroke, right? We call it cardiovascular disease. So both of them are of similar pathophysiology, happening in a similar format, but if it happens in the heart, it's called a heart attack. And if it happens in the brain, we call it a stroke. So this chart shows you, like, if you put together all the reasons, and if you lump the cardiovascular diseases into one category, that's the highest number. It's the number one killer in the United States. Ultimately, all these untreated coronary disease and valvular disease progress to heart failure. Our prior speaker, Dr. Basu, actually deals with the rhythm abnormalities, and it's called electrophysiology. Rhythms like atrial fibrillation, ventricular fibrillation, which causes to primary cardiac arrest. Other thing is the artery, diseases with arteries. You can see in the bottom, the right side, the aorta kind of is bigger here, and we call it an aneurysm. And when it ruptures after a big certain size, people die suddenly. It's not very common, but it's one of the important kind of vascular disease that we need to be familiar with. And we use this acronym FAST to detect symptoms, and we suggest people to be wary of these symptoms, like face. F stands for face, A stands for arm, S for speech, and T for time. When people have drooping or weakness or difficulty with speech, it's time to call 911. I just want to take this opportunity to let you know about this simple step, which is chest-only cardiac compression for CPR now, which is only 2 steps. When you recognize somebody having a cardiac arrest or collapsing, call the emergency system. In the US, it's 911, and start pushing hard and fast, about 100 times in a minute on the chest, at least 2 inches down on the compression. If we do that, as the help arrives, there's a higher chance of survival. The symptoms that you can expect is symptoms of heart attack, could be chest pain, chest pressure. So in women and diabetics, the symptoms could be a little bit different. Sometimes it could be nausea, fatigue, belching, etc. And there is another entity called microvascular heart attack. The small branches close off, causing heart attack. Not a huge amount of damage done to the heart muscle, but that could be a possibility in some individuals, more so in women, and which we cannot be able to treat with any surgical strategies, but we have medications that we use for that.
Thank you, Dr. Sujit. That was wonderful. And now I would like to invite and welcome Robert Browning and Sheva Carr, co-directors of HeartMath Healthcare. Hello, Robert and Sheva. Welcome to our event. And yes, I'll give the mic to you. Please start.
Thank you so much for having us here. I'm deeply grateful that this educational experience is happening. It's quite personal to me. My father is one of those fatalities that Dr. Indranil spoke about earlier. He died of sudden cardiac death 18 years ago. And there was no blockage in his heart. It was an electrical stop. And prior to that, actually, I had been working through our work at the HeartMath Institute with Earl Bakken, who created the pacemaker, at the Heart Brain Institute in Cleveland Clinic. And we were doing research in North Hawaii, which is an island where you can do a lot of investigation because it's a closed, contained environment in a sense. And I was shocked to discover through the cardiologist I was collaborating with at the time, Dr. Ken Riff, that 90% of heart disease patients there had heart disease that couldn't be explained by the typical risk factors. Diet, obesity, diabetes. They did have the risk factor of hypertension, as the physicians who spoke earlier pointed to. But there was no organic, which is to say biological or physical cause of that hypertension. And it led us down a path of understanding the critical role that emotions or stress or that survival mode that kick in when we're reactive emotionally play in hampering the heart. Since that time, and this is where we're kind of capping this off with the cherry of very good and exciting news. Since that time, the Journal of American Medical Association published a study in 2007 showing that workplace stress is a greater risk factor for cardiovascular disease than all the other risk factors combined. So all roads are leading to the Rome of our stress at the moment. And certainly that was the case with my father. And so I am heartened, and I think my dad would be so thrilled that his loss, he was a physician himself, could lead to your well-being. So the intervention, this very simple intervention that Robert and I are going to do with you right now, has been shown in a mere 6 weeks of applications a few times a day to reduce hypertension, which is one of, as physicians, one of our greatest indicators that you're at risk for cardiovascular episodes. To reduce, as an example, hypertension twice the impact of restricting salt in your diet, equivalent to a 40-pound weight loss and exercise regime or 2 years of pharmaceutical intervention in 6 weeks, and it's free. It's yours to do in a moment in time. I also want to say, well, anything you want to add to that first, Robert? So this is the really good news. And Dr. Indranil spoke earlier about the Toyota and the Tesla. Well, another aspect of your system that we found to be a primary driver in risk factors for cardiovascular disease is your autonomic nervous system. That's what gets out of whack, your fight, flight, freeze, appease response in the stress response that overtaxes and overburdens the heart through a variety of pathways we won't go into, because we're here to unburden your heart, not burden your mind with more ways your heart can be burdened. Because this simple little intervention actually synchronizes your autonomic nervous system and brings the fuel pedal of your Toyota and the brakes back into this harmonious, fluid interaction that could turn your Toyota into a Tesla. So maybe that's a little overpromising, but what it can do is it can take the functions that seem self-driving, autonomic means automatic, and allow us to take charge of the system and drive it deliberately and optimally for our benefit and health protection. And this is the supercalifragilistic great news. That's not a scientific term, but this is the very, very, very exciting good news. These tools don't take time because they involve breathing, and you have to breathe anyway. So you can do them while you do everything else you do in life. You just change the way that you're breathing and what you're focusing on while you breathe. All right, Robert, you want to take us into HeartMath intervention?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll just kind of first just go into one of the techniques, and then we'll show you some of the science of it as well. But essentially, there's two key components to this particular technique that we want to give you, to give your family, to give anyone, anywhere that you see is going through any form of stress at any point. And the first component of that technique, very much so, is about the breath. So any clinician in the room knows that when you breathe in, your heart rate accelerates. And when you breathe out, it induces a deceleration in heart rate. So if you can take a breath in at a certain interval, a balanced interval, about 5 seconds in and about 5 seconds out, but it's really just a little deeper than usual, but you're finding a rhythm that's comfortable for you. But as you breathe in and as you breathe out, you're naturally and with intention, you're creating more balance in the autonomic nervous system. If you were to look at heart rhythm patterns, which we'll show you in a moment, you'll start to see this very coherent sine wave curve in the heart rate variability, how the heart rate is accelerating and how it's decelerating. So let's just do the breath alone just for a moment, just about 5 seconds in. And about 5 seconds out. Do that for a few rhythms. And as you continue to breathe through the heart area, just make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling, such as care or appreciation or love or compassion for someone or something in your life, something that just comes easy to you right now. And breathe that feeling through the heart area at about the same rhythm, a few seconds in and a few seconds out, but infusing it with this regenerative feeling. We're going to show you a couple images really quickly as you continue to breathe through the heart area. The breath alone will shift the heart rhythm patterns, but as you infuse it with a regenerative emotion or attitude or feeling, it will help stabilize that shift. There will be more of a carryover effect, if you will. We'll go back to this in a second. This is an image of someone sitting in a chair, simply recalling something that was frustrating. That's the red line. Just simply recalling maybe an argument that morning or the traffic jam or that argument. And then the second image is the same person sitting in the same chair, simply doing those two steps you just did. Shift to the area in the heart, did some heart-focused breathing, and then activated a sense, in this case, of appreciation. It could have been anything. It could have been the sunset. It could have been a glass of wine. It could have been something sacred or something mundane, but it's the genuine feeling of a regenerative emotion or attitude that helps stabilize that shift in heart rhythm patterns. Now,
For our cardiologists in the room, let's just make sure that we're clear. This is not EKG we're looking at, in which case we'd be looking at AFib or VTach, and that's not desirable. But this is HRV, heart rate variability. You could think of, for our lay people in the room, an EKG like each individual note of the heart song. But HRV is the rhythm of the space between the notes. And that's what HeartMath investigated and uncovered is impacted by our emotions and then impacts over 1,400 things in our physiology, including our cardiovascular risk and burden, as well as what part of our brain is perceiving our stressors and responding to them. We can't always change life events, like as some of the physicians who spoke earlier pointed out, the death of a loved one, for example. But we can change how our bodies respond to those life events so we don't become the next fatality someone else has to grieve.
Absolutely. So what has the previous two physicians were saying earlier, any strategy that we can use to decrease our stress will help complement and facilitate all the other diseases and pathologies that ultimately can get us. So if we can take this little maneuver, and this is something that can be applied on the moment, eyes open, while driving a car, during a code, if you're in a hospital, it's just about being more conscious of what's going on inside of you at the physiological and the attitudinal level, and just simply making a choice to create that shift. And to Sheva's point, it can be very challenging to do that at times. We're just looking about little ratios of improvement. If you can do this a few more times in the day, when it was a little harder to do, and then you make a few more incremental progress the next day. It's all about ratios. Now, the other really beautiful thing about how the heart, we're a wholeness system. And so how the heart is communicating to the rest of the body, it's also very much communicating to the higher centers in the brain. So all the other strategies to shift our lifestyle, whether it's we're struggling with our diet and making responsible choices in what we're eating, whether it's memory to do the exercise, which I hate to do. She always has to remind me, but I have an intelligence in me that prompts me. It's like, I should probably do that exercise. I know
I try to plug
do.
his ears when I say that you can reduce your blood pressure using HeartMath equivalent to a normal exercise regime, but he doesn't hear this.
Because the bottom line is stress makes us stupid. And so when we're stressed, we actually don't have access to the higher centers of our brain as easily, because there's a synchronous response between the thalamus, which is like the traffic cop of the brain, and the heart rhythm patterns. When the heart is chaotic, which is produced by stress, the brain can often get a little chaotic. We knock over coffee cups, we say the wrong things, we forget to do all the self-care activities. But when we're coherent, simply by doing breath, by doing yoga, by creating a new baseline of physiological coherence in our system, it facilitates everything else that we're trying to improve upon for our health and our lifestyle.
We have a worksheet that shows this simple shift from a chaotic heart rhythm pattern to a coherent one, and the cascade of physiological benefits it brings, with instructions on how to do it. And we'll ensure that that worksheet is available via email to all of you through the organizers of this extremely important event.